I'm just going to bring in Jacob Rees Mogg, who has joined us here. What is your message to Cabinet Ministers going in to read that document this evening, this draft text? What would you be looking for if you were in that room?
Well, if what we've heard is true, this fails to meet the Conservative Party's manifesto, and it fails to meet many of the commitments that the Prime Minister makes. It would keep us in the customs union and de facto in the single market. This is the vassal state. It is a failure of the government's negotiating position. It is a failure to deliver on Brexit, and it is potentially dividing up the United Kingdom. It is very hard to see any reason why the Cabinet should support Northern Ireland being ruled from Dublin.
And is it in your view that Cabinet Ministers who don't agree should tell her tonight and walk away from the Cabinet table?
They should say that they do not agree with it if the text that has been leaked is correct. Interestingly, a text on the future of the United Kingdom is given to the Irish television station first, and not to the British Broadcasting Corporation. That seems to me rather peculiar, that we don't even get told our own future first. It gets given out abroad. I think that's discourteous to the nation.
Theresa May would say, I'm sure, that these have been difficult negotiations. It was always going to be a compromise, and no side is going to get exactly what they want, and you will not get exactly what you want.
Theresa May has said many things. She said that Brexit would mean Brexit. She said that no deal was better than a bad deal. And she said that no Prime Minister would agree to separating Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom. Sometimes what she says and what she does do not match.
So what do you think she should do now? You think that no deal is now, what, the most likely option?
I think she should stick to her promises and her manifesto commitments and her various speeches, which what we've heard of this agreement fails to do. I think trust in politics is very important. It's important the country can trust the Prime Minister. And if this document turns out to be accurate, then it will be very difficult to trust anything that comes out of Downing Street.
But some would say that once that general election result meant that she lost her majority, it was a general election which was about Brexit, that meant that this was always going to be a much more difficult compromise than it would have been if she'd had a resounding victory.
The Prime Minister said only a few weeks ago, long after the election result, that she would not do anything that separated Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom. It's not since the election that things have changed. It is actually very recently in post-Chequers that we have found a complete change in the government's approach, and basically the white flags have gone up all over Whitehall.
And there are some who say that Northern Ireland already has slightly different regulatory checks. They already have a different relationship with Ireland, for example, than the rest of the United Kingdom has. Could they not accept some differences if they were small ones?
No, these differences have been agreed between us as a nation. There are some differences in the devolved settlements in Scotland and in Wales as well. These are not a question of a foreign organisation telling us what the relationship should be between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And the issue here is that some aspects of the single market may apply in Northern Ireland, and these will be more controlled by Dublin than they will be by Belfast. This is quite improper to allow Dublin to make the rules in Northern Ireland. It's a betrayal of the Union.
So what kind of arrangement would you have liked to see her negotiate? People have talked about Canada Plus, which wouldn't necessarily solve the issue of no border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. There are lots of competing issues here, which is why we've ended up where we have.
That's right, but it is really bizarre to have got into a situation with the customs union where, as a full member of the European Union, we had a very straightforward mechanism for leaving the customs union, the exercise of Article 50. Now it appears that we will have to get the permission of the European Union to leave the customs union. This is a very eccentric way to negotiate. It is a very weak way to negotiate. Yes, indeed, free trade is what I would be in favour of, and if you want to call that Canada Plus or Super Canada, that I think is a good way of phrasing it.
Do you agree with Boris Johnson that the deal as it looked, or the draft agreement as it looked, would actually mean that it would be better to stay in the EU because we would at least have some control over the rules?
Well, as it happens, I can hear the great man's dulcet tones just about 3 yards away from us with a competitor station, and you can probably ask him in a moment. But I think what the government is currently negotiating is not delivering on the referendum result to leave the European Union. I think remaining in the European Union is off the cards, because that would be abandoning a democratic vote, reinforced by a general election where both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party said that the result of the referendum would be respected, and the Lib Dems, who wanted to overturn it, saw their vote share decline.
Do you agree with some in the Cabinet who have said actually that leaving the EU is the most important thing? Come March, we have to leave and we can sort out our future relationship and other things at that point.
The backstop doesn't allow us to leave the customs union without the permission of the European Union. So it's a lesser ability to leave under these arrangements than we currently have. That doesn't seem to me to be wise or to meet the requirements of what you're suggesting, of leave in any form and then settle the details.
So, what do you think happens next?
Well, I hope the Cabinet will block it, and if not, I hope Parliament will block it. I think what we know of this deal is deeply unsatisfactory.
And is it your feeling amongst your colleagues that there are enough of them there to block a deal if it's in these terms that we think it might be, and we must stress these are only leaks?
That's right, they're only leaks given to the Irish broadcaster, as I had mentioned before. There seems to be a lot and growing opposition to these very poor proposals.
Okay, Jacob Rees Mogg, thank you very much indeed.